When you close your eyes and imagine Honolulu, what do you see? Perhaps it's the shimmering white sand beaches stretching endlessly under the golden sun, or the gentle sway of hula dancers moving to the soft strum of ukulele melodies. Maybe it's the palm trees whispering secrets in the warm tropical breeze, or the vibrant energy of a city that feels like a dream come true. This is the Honolulu of postcards, the one etched into the hearts of travelers worldwide, a picture perfect. Paradise that promises escape, beauty, and serenity. It's a destination that feels almost mythical, a place where worries dissolve into the rhythm of crashing waves and the glow of a sunset over the Pacific. But step off the polished, tourist-lined streets of Waikiki, wander just a few blocks beyond the glittering facades of luxury resorts, and the illusion begins to fracture. The reality is raw, unfiltered, and heartbreaking. Tents cluster along sidewalks, their faded fabrics flapping in the wind. Shopping carts overflow with personal belongings, clothes, blankets, fragments of lives pieced together with care. People huddle on park benches, their faces etched with stories of hardship, weathered not just by the island sun, but by the weight of survival. The soothing sound of ocean waves, so iconic to this place, is drowned out by the quiet despair of those who call the streets their home. In 2024, Hawaii reported a staggering 6,389 people experiencing homelessness across the state, with roughly 70% approximately 4,494 individuals concentrated on the island of Oahu, home to Honolulu. This figure, drawn from the annual point-in-time count conducted by Partners in Care and sponsored by the U.S. Department of Housing and Urban Development (HUD), marks a troubling 12% increase from 2023. To put it in perspective, Hawaii has one of the highest per capita homelessness rates in the United States, with 44.9 people per 10,000 residents living without stable housing. That's nearly triple the national average of 16 per 10,000. On Oahu alone, 2,766 people were unsheltered in 2024, a number that has nearly doubled over the past decade. These aren't just statistics, they're a deafening wake-up call. Each number represents a life disrupted, a dream shattered, a family pushed to the brink. Behind every digit is a story of someone who once had a home, a job, a sense of security until the fragile threads holding their life together snapped. Consider this: the median rent for a one-bedroom apartment in Honolulu is $300 per month as of 2025. Meanwhile, Hawaii's minimum wage stands at $14 per hour. A full-time minimum wage worker earns roughly $240 a month before taxes, barely enough to cover rent, with nothing left for utilities, food, transportation, or unexpected emergencies. To afford a modest apartment, they'd need to work 120 hours a week, an impossible feat for anyone, let alone those already stretched thin. For many, the math simply doesn't add up. The gap between income and expenses yawns wide, swallowing hopes and forcing people onto the streets. This isn't a temporary blip or a minor inconvenience, it's a systemic failure that traps thousands in a cycle of poverty and displacement. The numbers paint a grim picture, but they only scratch the surface of a crisis that's as complex as it is urgent. What drives these numbers? What keeps people on the streets when the world around them sparkles with wealth and opportunity? To understand, we need to look closer at the duality of Honolulu's reality and the forces that keep this crisis growing. The city's sweeps, regular cleanups of homeless encampments have become a controversial fixture. Tents are dismantled, belongings confiscated, and people displaced, often with nowhere to go. With only 1,500 shelter beds available for over 4,000 homeless individuals on Oahu, the system is overwhelmed, stretched far beyond its capacity. Many simply move to another park, another street corner, trapped in a relentless cycle of displacement. A local activist sums it up with brutal clarity: "We're not solving homelessness, we're just hiding it from the tourists." These sweeps may temporarily clear the streets, making them more palatable for visitors, but they do little to address the root causes of homelessness. Instead, they deepen the chasm of mistrust between the homeless community and authorities. making it harder for outreach workers to connect people with desperately needed services. Possessions, sometimes the only remnants of a person's identity, are lost in these cleanups, leaving individuals even more vulnerable. The human toll is immeasurable, yet the pressure to maintain Honolulu's image as a pristine destination often overshadows the suffering. While officials tout clean sidewalks and tourist-friendly boulevards, the unraveling of Honolulu's social safety net tells a far darker story, one that can't be swept away. Homelessness in Honolulu isn't just a crisis of shelter, it's a symptom of a deeper, more systemic unraveling. The social safety net, meant to catch those who fall, isn't just fraying, it's tearing wide open, exposing the most vulnerable to the elements, both literal and societal. Look closely, and you'll see that this crisis isn't solely about a lack of housing. It's about the failure of systems designed to protect people before they ever reach the street, systems that have been neglected, underfunded, and overwhelmed. For far too long, nearly 1/3 of Honolulu's homeless population identifies as Native Hawaiian, despite this group making up just 10% of the state's residents. This staggering overrepresentation isn't a coincidence, it's the legacy of generations of displacement, systemic inequity, and the lingering wounds of colonization. Native Hawaiians have been pushed to the margins of their own homeland, grappling with poverty rates and housing instability far higher than their non-native counterparts. The echoes of historical trauma reverberate through modern policies, perpetuating a cycle of disenfranchisement that's as persistent as it is heartbreaking. Healthcare, too, tells a grim tale. Over 60% of Honolulu's unhoused population struggles with mental health disorders, substance use issues, or both. Yet the services meant to help are woefully inadequate. Detox centers and psychiatric clinics are stretched to capacity, with waiting lists that extend not for days or weeks but for months, sometimes years. For someone battling addiction or depression on the streets, accessing consistent care is like chasing a mirage, always just out of reach. Every delay can be fatal. Every missed appointment a step closer to despair. Shelters, too, are running beyond full, turning away dozens night after night simply because there's no room left. For women and children, the stakes are even higher. Domestic violence is a frequent entry point into homelessness, yet specialized shelters for survivors are scarce. Imagine escaping an abusive home, clutching your child's hand, only to be told there's no space, no help, no safe harbor. The fear of losing not just your belongings but your child's sense of security looms large. This isn't just a housing crisis, it's a human one, rooted in the failure to provide the basic protections every person deserves. Homelessness in Honolulu isn't an isolated issue confined to alleyways or park benches. It's a societal crisis that ripples through every corner of the city. When society ignores the unhoused, everyone pays a price. The effects bleed into neighborhoods, strain institutions, and test the moral fabric of the community. Police officers, for instance, are increasingly asked to double as social workers, responding to everything from wellness checks to encampment removals. But law enforcement isn't trained for this role, and when the only response to a housing crisis is a badge and a baton, the problem isn't solved, it's merely shifted. Schools, too, bear the weight of this crisis. Educators report rising numbers of students arriving sleep-deprived, unfocused, or absent altogether. Some children bounce between motel shelters and the back seats of cars, robbed of stability and a fair shot at their future. How can a child focus on multiplication tables when they don't know where they'll sleep tonight? The impact extends beyond the classroom, shaping a generation whose potential is stifled by circumstances beyond their control. Even the general public feels the strain. Residents voice growing frustration, caught between compassion and discomfort. Tourists, expecting a flawless paradise, are confronted with the jarring sight of humans suffering, someone huddled on a street corner, their entire life packed into a backpack. The illusion of Honolulu as a postcard-perfect destination cracks. Under the weight of this reality, some call for stricter enforcement to clean up the streets. Others demand bold investments in housing, mental health, and addiction treatment. The arguments clash, but at their core lies a deeper question: can a city truly call itself civilized if it turns a blind eye to those who need help the most? Why does Honolulu's homelessness crisis keep growing, despite its beauty and wealth? The answer isn't simple, but it's brutally clear when you dig beneath the surface. This isn't the result of one bad policy or one unlucky break. It's a perfect storm of economic pressure, geographic isolation, and systemic neglect crashing down at once. Let's break it down. First, there's the crushing cost of housing. Honolulu consistently ranks among the most expensive rental markets in the US, with median rent for a one-bedroom apartment soaring past $2,100 per month in 2024. At a minimum wage of $14 per hour, a person would need to work over 110 hours a week every week just to afford rent, leaving no room for food, utilities, or childcare. For many families living paycheck to paycheck, a single setback, an illness, a layoff, a broken car can mean eviction and a one-way ticket to the streets. The high cost of living extends beyond rent. Hawaii's dependence on imports drives up the price of everything from groceries to medicine. A gallon of milk costs more here than almost anywhere else in the country. For those already struggling, these expenses are a constant, unrelenting pressure, eroding any chance of financial stability. Geography plays a cruel role, too. Unlike mainland cities, where people in crisis can relocate to more affordable areas, Hawaii's isolation makes that impossible. A plane ticket off the island is a luxury, costing hundreds of dollars that most can't spare. The state's natural beauty, once a draw, becomes a trap for those with nowhere else to go. Then there are the systemic failures, slow-moving, generational forces that grind people down. Affordable housing construction lags far behind demand, stalled by bureaucratic red tape, zoning restrictions, and community resistance. The economy's reliance on tourism creates seasonal, low-wage jobs with little security, leaving workers vulnerable to economic swings. Native Hawaiian communities, already scarred by centuries of displacement and colonization, face poverty and homelessness at disproportionate rates. A stark reminder of historical injustices that persist today. Mental health care, while critical, is another broken link. Services exist, but they're underfunded and overwhelmed. Wait lists for psychiatric care stretch for months, and crisis response teams are understaffed. Without stable housing, recovery from addiction or mental health challenges is nearly impossible. This isn't just a housing issue or a cost of living issue, it's the result of decades of neglect, broken systems, and a refusal to confront. The root causes head dash on. To their credit, Honolulu's leaders haven't ignored the crisis entirely. Governor Josh Green and Mayor Rick Blongiardi have publicly acknowledged the scale of the problem, backing their words with increased funding for affordable housing and homeless support services. At the heart of their efforts is the Housing First model, a proven strategy that prioritizes stable housing as the foundation for addressing other challenges, like addiction, mental health, and unemployment. The logic is simple. Without a safe place to call home, recovery and stability are out of reach. Innovative projects are taking root. Cow Hill Village's clusters of tiny homes designed to foster community while offering dignity and safety are popping up across Oahu. Plans to repurpose vacant buildings into transitional housing hubs aim to create stepping stones toward permanent stability. These initiatives hold promise, offering not just shelter but a sense of belonging and hope. But good intentions often collide with harsh realities. For every unit built, dozens more people fall into homelessness. Zoning restrictions, bureaucratic bottlenecks, and pushback from residents who support solutions but not in my backyard slow progress to a crawl. Even when funding is secured, navigating political and legal obstacles can delay action for months or years. Frontline organizations, caseworkers, shelters, outreach teams are drowning under the weight of demand, with burnout rates climbing as fast as the need for their services. The question looms large. Are these efforts building solutions, or are they merely scrambling to contain a disaster that's spiraling out of control? Real progress demands more than press conferences and ribbon-cutting ceremonies. It requires urgency, empathy, and the political will to prioritize people over optics, even if it means challenging powerful interests or rewriting the status quo. There's no single fix for Honolulu's homelessness crisis, but the path forward is clear if we're willing to walk it. Increasing the stock of genuinely affordable housing is paramount, not luxury condos, with a handful of low-income units, but sustainable homes for working families, single parents, and those rebuilding their lives. This means cutting through red tape, reforming zoning laws, and investing in construction at a scale that matches the need. Mental health and substance use services must be scaled dramatically, with mobile response teams that can meet people where they are, on the streets, in parks, under bridges. Wait lists that stretch for months are unacceptable when lives are at stake. Educational and vocational programs can offer a lifeline, helping individuals rebuild skills and confidence to re-enter the workforce and regain independence. Equally critical is a shift in public perception. Homelessness isn't a blight to be swept away. It's a shared challenge that demands compassion, innovation, and action. Communities must come together, not to point fingers or demand quick fixes, but to build solutions that reflect our shared humanity. If paradise is only for the wealthy, is it truly paradise at all? Honolulu's crisis forces us to redefine what it means to be a community. It's not about postcard-perfect beaches or flawless weather, it's about whether every person has a place to call home, a chance to heal, and the dignity to thrive. We can create a better future. But it will take more than hope. It will take bold leadership, community engagement, and a refusal to accept tents on sidewalks as the status quo.